So I'm here today with Paul from PTZOptics. Paul, tell us a little bit about what is a PTZ camera.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me. PTZ Cameras stands for Pan, Tilt, and Zoom. And it's basically a robotic camera that can be controlled remotely and capture video. They're being used in schools a lot for lecture capture, creating videos that students can watch on their own time. And teachers and educators can upload those videos to learning management platforms and essentially flip the classroom. It's a great tool for classrooms because they're large spaces generally, and that optical zoom can be used to have a camera, an unobtrusive small camera in the back of a space, zoom all the way in to show notes on a whiteboard or a blackboard, and also pan and tilt so it can follow a teacher as they present and teach.
Now, in the States, this is something that's being implemented across schools on a wide scale?
Certainly that is true. From higher education, even down to K through 12, the need for recording video in education has really skyrocketed since COVID-19. But even before, schools have been recognizing the value of quote unquote flipping the classroom, where students can watch the lectures at their own pace, even rewatch them, pause them, do a little bit of research, and they leverage learning management systems in order to do that. But to really truly flip the classroom and provide students with the opportunity to watch the lectures at their own time, rewatch them and have all of that cataloged and archived, they really needed to record the video. So it's been a movement happening over the past 5 to 10 years, is kind of replacing any old cameras that were in standard definition that were difficult for the students to really read the notes on the blackboard and the whiteboard, and then really upgrading to remotely controllable cameras that can either automatically follow a teacher from in their presentation space, or a robotically controlled camera that can be controlled by the teacher or remotely from a secondary camera operator.
Okay, that's a really interesting point you've raised there. When I think about a camera in a classroom situation, I'm thinking, who's going to control the camera? So it's not something that it's not like a 4K camera where you punch in and punch out again, in post or whenever you like. This is a real-time optical zoom. So, give me a sense of how that might be controlled in a real-world classroom situation.
Sure. And in fact, I'm actually in my studio right now. So this is actually where I am right now. And you can see there, this is where I'm sitting. Now, it's not a classroom, but for example, a teacher might be on the other side of a room, and
Yes.
You really want to be able to zoom into that space, and you can show the details of what's happening on a whiteboard or a blackboard area to students quite easily. And really, the applications are very wide-reaching. It goes from, some teachers have 2 or 3 PTZ cameras, and there might be one on the ceiling to show, a specific chemistry project. There can be PTZ cameras, obviously, at the back of the room to capture specific spaces, and they're being used to enhance what students can see in the video recordings. And they can also be used for, as you said, real-time video communications. So whether the teachers are live streaming, doing a Zoom meeting, hosting a online course, or simply just creating videos for their course.
Essentially, a teacher or even a student or group of students can control the cameras. They can use either a software interface, or they can use like a joystick, like I think I saw you had there. And then how do we connect all these cameras together? I understand there's a new protocol for video over IP.
That's right. And before I answer that, I do want to take a moment to answer the control piece of this, because there are so many great control options for PTZ cameras. Students can actually request remote camera control from their teachers through Zoom. So that's been a really popular way to control PTZ cameras. PTZOptics cameras in particular, if it's connected to the computer, you running Zoom via USB, students from anywhere in the world can remotely control the camera. So
Oh, that's
that,
amazing.
along with actually having like a smartphone app and then building the camera controls directly into a plethora of software solutions. The control part of it is really important because the cameras are robotically controlled. Now, taking it a step further, and I'll go back to this camera right here, which will show you the new tech NDI, which is the new IP protocol that has become really popular. And this allows teachers to connect the camera directly over a single Ethernet connection. And so that Ethernet connection really makes it easy for teachers. Let me see if I can zoom in a little more here. That Ethernet connection can power the camera, it can control the camera, and obviously send video and audio anywhere over the local area network. The latest version of NDI is called NDI-HX, which is high efficiency. That protocol uses bandwidth on the local area network, roughly 20 megabits per second. It can be adjusted to be a little higher or lower, but it really does create a high quality video connection that is affordable to deploy because it can be deployed on existing school network infrastructure, and most schools have gigabit network infrastructures. That means they have 1,000 megabits. Putting a 20 megabit camera on that network is realistic. Even if you need to put 100 PTZ cameras into a school, that's only 200 megabits per second, and that's generally a realistic number for schools, even if they're deploying hundreds of cameras.
That's absolutely amazing. And I noticed that you have, I think, did I see a BCN connector on there as well? Are you using that for a monitor or something?
Yeah, the interesting thing with PTZOptics cameras is we do support multiple video outputs. And in fact, you can even see a line in audio input as well. This is our SDI model. We also have USB models, which are really popular for teachers because they can just plug it right into their computer, use it with Zoom. And as I mentioned, the USB models support the far end remote camera control on Zoom video conferencing. But with this model, you see there is obviously the Ethernet, there's HDMI and SDI. These are still very popular. HDMI and SDI, for example, are popular for lecture capture recording systems. So for example, there's many popular ones out there, including Echo 360 and Panopto, MediaSite, Sonic Foundry. These companies create dedicated lecture capture recording systems. And you might think, well, why not just use Zoom and hit the record button? Well, some of these more advanced lecture capture recording systems will take two video inputs, and one of them might be SDI and one of them might be HDMI, for example, and actually allow the students on the recorded video that's hosted in the cloud to say, I want to see the camera view full screen, or now I really want to take a look at the teacher's HDMI input that is showing the teacher's presentation from their laptop, so that the student gets a little bit more control over what they're seeing. Because again, we're flipping the classroom. Students are rewatching these lectures at their own pace. Maybe, and hopefully, the students were in class, right, watching the lecture, and the thought was, hey, now I can go back to that specific spot that I didn't understand. Maybe I want to see what the teacher was writing on the whiteboard. Maybe I want to see their PowerPoint presentation slide at that specific moment. Now that we're here in COVID-19, at least in the United States, there's not much in-person class going on, making it that much more important to have high-quality recordings for students to take their online courses.
So I guess you've been quite busy rolling out cameras and upgrading schools, because your particular cameras, I don't want to make this an ad about PTZOptics, but they do seem to be on the more affordable side of the cameras that are available.
That's correct. And it really does make deploying video solutions affordable for schools, which is one of our main goals. It is incredibly important right now. And that's why I mentioned some of the more affordable options like Zoom, which starts at, just $14.99 a month, turns a computer into a video conferencing distance learning scenario. And then if you do just have a USB connection, it can record those videos of that nature. But then, as you can see, we were looking at the back of this camera with SDI and HDMI and some of the NDI options. That allows for a lot of flexibility that higher education institutions, many of them really like to have the ability to remotely control the camera from anywhere in their local area network, the ability to connect these to those lecture capture systems that many of them have deployed, and then via NDI, the ability to bring in any camera on their local area network into a Zoom meeting is also possible. So there's a lot of flexibility. But yes, we've been very busy helping even K through 12 up to higher education schools working on distance learning, video recording, and lecture capture.
I suppose it's pretty easy to take the existing infrastructure that you've got, whatever cameras you might already have, whether you have a standalone recorder lecture system or any of that stuff, and even potentially just, slowly roll that out, maybe upgrade a couple of cameras, maybe then move on to some software and so on. And it's very modular, I guess. You can just put your toe in the water if you're not already using it, as a lot of schools are not yet in Australia, and just see how it all works, get a feel for it, and start investing a little bit more in the system once it proves itself.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to start. And using things like NDI, as we mentioned, has reduced the cost significantly because there is no need for capture devices with NDI technology.
Right.
So with NDI, when you put the camera on the local area network, you're leveraging that investment that you've already made in networking hardware. So not to mention that the expensive installations that can happen with SDI cabling and HDMI cabling and extenders, not to mention that when you get the video from the camera to your source, you need to have either a capture card or a lecture capture recording system, all very expensive. With NDI, it truly has reduced the overall implementation of video in classrooms by leveraging the local area network and allowing computers to connect directly to the camera over the local area network. Computers can then run lecture capture software. For example, Kaltura is a really popular one, and they have a free piece of software that does lecture capture recording. It records the videos and it uploads them directly to Kaltura. That's a movement we're seeing across many of the learning management systems. They're deploying their own free lecture capture recording tools. They need to be run on a fairly robust Windows or Mac computer in order to work properly. But getting that video to them in a large classroom setting has always been expensive. Using NDI really reduced the cost of that.
That's fantastic. Well, I've been talking with Paul today. It's a pity he doesn't know much about this stuff, but we'll make do with the limited knowledge that he's been able to share with us today. And thank you so much, Paul. It's really terrific having you on the call, and we really appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me.